Okay. Right. Hi, everyone. My name is Stacy Sawin, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of FinAbility. We are a 501c3 nonprofit with the mission of financially empowering survivors of domestic violence. And I'm very excited to be here today with members of our Survivor Advisory Committee. We've started this quarterly webinar series as a way of sharing survivor stories, fostering more community, and also spreading awareness about what the survivor experience truly is. We started that series by talking a lot about what it looks like to be in an abusive relationship. We followed that with a webinar about the separation process and what it looks like day one, 100 and 1,000 out of that relationship, and the financial implications and challenges. And today we wanted to transition to a bit of a lighter topic, but one that's equally important. And that's talking not just about what it looks like to heal as a survivor, but looking at that through the lens of self-care as it connects to financial wellness. So with me are Cherry and Ruhani. I'll give them a moment to introduce themselves, and then I'm going to transition our conversation to start talking a little bit more about our topic today. But Cherry, would you like to go first?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Stacy, thank you for inviting us, and thank you for the opportunity that you've given us to share our ideas and experiences here. And for the audience, thank you so much for attending. We are also expecting to learn from you as well as we also share our experiences as survivors. Ronnie?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Ruhani Amin. I'm joining on from Greensboro, North Carolina. I am a survivor of financial abuse. In our last webinar series, I had the opportunity to share a little bit about my story. I am a single mom with 3 little ones, so that has also impacted my survivor experience. I currently work full-time at a nonprofit doing communications work at the North Carolina Coalition Against Domestic Violence. I'm also a grad student working on a master's degree in information science and data analytics. I'm very happy to be here to share my lessons learned along my personal journey and to learn from all of you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Cherry. Thank you, Ruhani. Today, I'll also share a little bit of my survivor story as we go through these different talking points and questions. And I want to also encourage folks in the audience, please utilize the chat functionality. We want to know if things are resonating with you. If you have something you want to share, you can put it there or raise your hand and also join the conversation. Since it is a smaller group, we'd love for this to be as interactive as possible. And on that note, I'm actually going to open a poll. We'd love to just better understand who's with us today. This is anonymous, so we won't know who is saying what. But again, just trying to better understand so we can tailor what we're talking about today to be as relevant as possible. So this is my first time launching a poll. Let's see how it goes. Can everyone see the question, what brings you here today? Maybe a thumbs up if you can see it, thumbs down if you don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, great. And this is multi-select, so do select anything that is applicable, and I'll give folks just a couple of seconds. It looks like we already have 12 out of 15 responses, so great job, folks. Okay, I think the only missing response is me, actually, so let's end the poll and share those results. Can folks see the results of that poll? Great. So it looks like we have a great mix of people here today, folks with lived experience, folks who are interacting with survivors professionally, and also equally importantly, people who really want to support survivors and be a good ally. So to everyone who joined, thank you. And we'll make sure to kind of talk about things from those different angles. And also, again, please feel free to to join the conversation. So to get us started, I have a question for the panel. The National Institute of Mental Health defines self-care as self-care is a practice of prioritizing your well-being and making choices to promote your health and happiness. To the panel, do you agree with this definition? And if so, what parts of it resonate with you?
I would like to answer first, and I would say yes, I agree. And not only to promote wellness and well-being, but also to improve everything in my life as a survivor, or like even like regular people can define self-care as that. Self-care for me is very holistic. It has to be it has to happen physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially. And yeah, for me, when I do self-care, it's I feel like I'm like one step in improving my life. I'm doing it little by little, forming habits of self-care. And I also am a role model to my children. And I teach them how to do it earlier in life so that it is something that they can practice, and they could improve their life, because the world nowadays is like really complicated and really difficult, and we navigate every day with all of these stress and all of like unhealthiness at times, and self-care really helps in every way.
Yeah, I wanted to share just a little bit about things that I've observed about myself on my own personal survivor journey. I noticed in the beginning, like I separated around in 2020 during the pandemic. And during that time, I noticed that interacting with other just people that I feel close to really felt like the one and only form of self-care that I was craving. And it was pandemic, it was quarantine and social distancing. So that was really challenging. But I found ways to, get like my self-care fix, so to speak, by just being in touch with people that I cared about, texting them, calling them, finding creative ways to meet in person, like outdoors or with masks on. In the early stages of my survivor journey, I was just really, really craving a lot of social interaction. I needed safe places to just laugh and cry and vent and share just how upside down my world was feeling. And I know that everyone's life was feeling upside down because of COVID, but mine felt, doubly so because I was going through separation and divorce and just learning about what financial abuse even means for the first time in my life after 10 years of marriage. So I my way of seeking self-care in those days was just trying to find safe people to vent with. Over time, that started to change, and I wanted to find ways of taking care of myself and like finding my happy place on my own without the constant need for like talking and venting. And that looks different for everybody, but I'd like to share some of the things that have worked for me, because sometimes I think when you just get in a rut, you might, forget that like, oh yeah, I like doing that too. So this is just like a laundry list of things that I loved to do that I hate using the word self-care because it's kind of like a buzzword that it gets used a lot and it kind of loses its meaning. It's still a very important term. It's a common language that we all understand. But from when I'm speaking to myself, I'll often say like, this is what I'm doing to just find my happy place. But when I say that, I mean self-care. So on my laundry list, the first thing at the top is always walks. I live near a beautiful trail that's surrounded by a lake and trees, and I love to go look at the flowers and observe the birds. I love it when I run into neighbors, and because I, live and walk in the same place, most days of the week, I do run into familiar faces, and that always feels like a special gift. It gets me out of the house. I also love embroidery. So here's an example of something that I'm working on right now.
That's so pretty.
So thank you, Stacy. Just throwing some books and plants on a fabric just instantly takes me to my happy place. And I love to cook. My favorite YouTube channel is called Bangla Rannaghar. It's a Bengali woman who shares her take on like traditional Bangladeshi recipes. And my family is from Bangladesh, so I love being able to learn new recipes and connect with my heritage. Um, and then lastly, I love to cycle. Sometimes I go alone, other times I join a local cycling group or club that meets once a week and they try out new trails around town. But either way, those are some things that I just like to do to try to help find my happy place.
Yes.
That sounds
Oh, go
wonderful.
ahead, Sherry.
That sounds wonderful. She really pictured everything for me, and I felt like I want to join you in your self-care journey.
Yeah, can you teach us how to embroider, Ruhani? Can that be our next webinar?
That would be fun. That could be really fun. I actually learned a lot of it from YouTube as well. YouTube is my best friend.
I love that. And Ruhani, something you touched upon that I'd love to give us all an opportunity to expand on was, post-separation, we frequently hear from survivors that you start to realize that a lot of the behaviors your harm doer exhibiting are a type of abuse maybe you didn't know about. So for example, so frequently we're experiencing financial abuse, and it's not till you leave and you really reflect on what's happened or have more information at hand to really label it as such. And that can be a lot to take in. I remember the first time I identified as a survivor, it took me several months to say it out loud and to really process that. And I know self-care is such a big part of being able to move through that processing journey and being able to further our healing. So I love to give everyone opportunity to expand upon what role does self-care play in healing, and if we can tie it back to revelations around financial abuse or financial wellness, that would be great too. Yeah, and I can start too because I know that was a long question. But for myself, the interesting situation was my harm doer worked at my former company with me. So my company actually footed the legal bills, paid for a lot of my safety expenses. So I didn't experience financial abuse in the same way many survivors do. But I was trapped at my job essentially. I didn't have the ability to leave because I knew I would be inheriting hundreds of thousands of dollars of expenses annually that I simply couldn't afford. And once finally the situation was over and I could leave my job and eventually find myself at FinAbility, it took me a long time to process that for so many years I was in a career in a place where it was toxic and I was incredibly unhappy. And I started doing this form of yoga called yin yoga, where you do long holds like 3 to 5 minutes, and I would just cry. It was really this big emotional release. And it was important because it was how I was initially able to let out all these feelings that I was holding in, and like they felt a lot more real because of that in those moments. And it was different form of self-care than I was used to, because when I often think of self-care, it's how do I comfort myself? How do I feel better? How do I seek joy? But this was something painful I was purposely making myself do, but it was cathartic. And I want to go back to the definition of self-care because it was really important to my well-being and health. So it helped me rethink about what self-care means for me. And as a survivor, for me, it's often what will make me heal, even if it's not easy and kind of painful.
I like the way when you said that self-care is also like healing, and because that's true also in my case. I thought when I was in the relationship that I was helping pay the bills, swiping my credit card, putting everything under my name, and and having a job, a consistent job, and like sometimes like breaking off from that job because something happens in between, and it's very difficult to navigate the situation, and then like I have to apply for a new job again. So like pretty much like we moved everywhere. I had like so many jobs, and I had like work gaps, and at the same time, I was also taking care of my children. And then when I left the situation, I realized that, like, oh my goodness, I was in a very financial abusive situation, because when I was in the shelter, they were teaching me all of those things, like what is financial abuse, what are like the symptoms, like what are the red flags that you need to look for, and how do you avoid it in the future. And then from there, I started taking care of myself, and like just looking at everything, looking at all of my debts, looking at my credit, looking at like what I owe, and looking how to save more money, how to invest more money. It's like I cannot do this without this. There's always kind of like a requirement for you to like get up the ladder. I cannot save until I learn how to budget. I cannot learn how to budget until I track my expenses. So for me, like little by little, using all of the resources that I have from the shelter, from my friends, um, that it helped me. And I did this monthly self-care of just looking at everything, my expenses, my income, and like the variables, the things that I can change and the things that I cannot change, and just trying to like overcome my emotions sometimes, like when I want something really bad, I want to buy something really bad, and and I always think to myself, I have a goal, I have this short-term goal and I have this long-term goal. And how do I have like discipline and consistency with those? So that's kind of like the summary of my financial self-care journey. And so far, like I'm still doing all of those things. I still do my monthly, I still check my credit, I still check like where I'm at, like with my debts, and I still check. I have like automatic payments, and for me, that's also like a form of self-care, because sometimes we do forget, we don't put it on our calendar. So like having that amount and just like spending, within my means. And I have 4 children, and it's tough, and I am thankful that I have like a good paying job, and I'm also like raising them alone. So I get resourceful at times, like little things like the food that I cook, what are like the inexpensive, healthy food that I can cook for my kids. And yeah, those little things like help me here and there.
I love that. I think we so frequently don't talk about how financial planning and things like budgeting can be such a great form of self-care. And I see we have a question from Stan. Stan, would you like to either put it in the chat or unmute?
Sure. If you don't mind the unmuting, I was actually going to comment the comment you just made, Stacy, about the value of financial self-care. The natural inclination, I've got to believe, is to start with emotional and physical self-care, which makes perfect sense. But tracking not only your expenses, but how well you're doing once you start saving and what kind of progress you've made over time can be reassuring, I would think. So I echo your comments, Stacy and Sherry, on taking the financial self-care as well.
Yeah, and for people who don't know Stan, he's one of our volunteers who leads our financial classes and also is part of our piloting one-on-one financial mentorship program. So thank you, Stan. We always appreciate your comments and insights. Yeah, Rohani, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, sure. Just some things that I noticed about my own personal journey when I started this journey. I used to think of finances as like this big, scary cloud storm in my mind. And probably like in my home, it was just like a stack of papers that I never got to. It was always pushed to the side. And I just didn't know like what to do with it. And anytime that I sat to try to understand it, it just very quickly got overwhelming and I felt very emotionally flooded and couldn't deal with it. So I decided to try to take a different route and just like learn, oh, what do other people do to figure out their finances? Instead of worrying about mine, let me go see what other people do. And the reality TV show, it's on Netflix by Ramit Sethi. It's called How to Get Rich. That really helped me a lot because they brought contestants onto this show that were just like me. And they were just like, Ramit, here's a stack of my stuff. Like, what do I do? That's how I felt. And so I kind of got to see in real time in, Hollywood style how they handled that. And that was very inspiring. Um, and then that got me thinking about just finances in like all kinds of parts of my life. I remember like I went to the library like I do every week to get some books for my kids, and I'm just browsing the shelves and I saw a personal finance book. I wasn't even looking for something for myself to read. I was looking for something for my kids to read, but because this was like on my mind, I stumbled into it and I was ready. At that point, I was ready to receive this kind of wisdom. The book that I picked up was oh, let me check. I wrote it down because I forget. Finance for the People, Getting a Grip on Your Finances by Paco de Leon. And it changed my world. And there's dozens of books out there that cover the same topic, but this just happened to be the one that was kind of a turning point for me because it was written in a way that really resonated with me. And then, as I go on my daily walks, I started getting tired of my usual playlist and I started looking for financial advice podcasts and just stumbled into some very helpful advice on there too. So that to me felt like a much easier way to enter into the world of learning about personal finance, of just like leaving behind the things that cause me the stress and just diving into like a structured, organized program, like a book or a podcast. And then from there, I felt like ready to make a spreadsheet and just transfer some numbers in from these bills and things that have been coming in the mail. And my spreadsheet was mostly white when I started, but now 2 years later, I've got like multiple tabs, lots of different color codes, and I really get it. And it gives me a lot of joy once a month to like go through and update my spreadsheet. It's like fun now. I set, like Cherry, I also set all my bills on auto pay. I don't know when my electricity is collected, but it gets paid. And then at the end of the month, I will just like look at all the bills that got auto paid and enter in the numbers and kind of look through and see how I did. And over the course of many months, I was surprised to realize that I'm spending a lot less than I thought I was. And I was making more progress towards like saving and building a new life than I realized. And then I started to think about like, well, what are the things that I want to do? Like I want to go on a vacation with my family. So I mapped out like, where do I want to go? How much do I anticipate that will cost? And then with my savings every month, I started to figure out like, how soon can I afford this trip that I want to take with my family? And the whole journey just really felt more manageable because it was like a one step at a time instead of trying to just do everything at once and really accomplishing none of them well. So that's just kind of how my journey went.
Oh, I love that. And the fact that you said it's now fun to go in and look at the budget, that's incredible and definitely something I'm still aspiring for, but that gives me hope on that. I will add, when in the aftermath for my situation, I remember feeling utterly overwhelmed and wanting to just have control of my life in at least like one small area. And creating a budget was terrifying, but it made a big difference for me too. I wasn't sure if I was going to have enough money to cover my bills from month to month, and just knowing like I'm okay, or I wasn't going to be okay, but now I will be, gave me so much peace of mind. But I think more importantly, I felt once I had one area like under control a little bit more, it was just that much easier to like tackle the next thing and the next thing. And I think it taught me as well. When I get overwhelmed, it's often just the unknown unknowns in my life. And the more I can try to at least understand what is in front of me and what needs to happen, the more empowered I feel. And that's not only a big piece of self-care, since it's really helping me have that peace of mind, but also for the healing part too, because once you know what challenges you have to face, it's just that much easier to tackle them and move forward in that journey. Um, yeah, I always appreciate hearing from you, Cherry and Ruhani. Thank you for sharing. And
Thank you
I'd like
for
to take the conversation to talk a little bit more about striking balance between fiscal responsibility and self-care. Sometimes it can feel like they're kind of butting heads a bit. For example, wanting to go to the spa, but maybe it's expensive, or wanting to go out to dinner with friends, understanding that maybe money is more limited at a certain point of time. How have you all struck a balance between the two?
I'm happy to answer that one because I feel like this is something that I've navigated many times. If I have a desire to go and do something that's kind of more expensive, a spa treatment or a restaurant meal, I don't need to say no, I can't do it, but I just might need to say that not this week, maybe next week or next month, and really think about what I need to adjust to be able to save up and be able to do it. So it feels a lot more empowering to just say yes, but later, instead of just saying, no, I can't do that at all. And truthfully, like that's how that's a skill that we learn as parents too. We tell from a very young age, our toddlers are asking for lollipops for dinner. And we always tell them, yes, you can have a lollipop after you finished your dinner. We don't tell them, no, you can't ever have a lollipop, right? So we can teach ourselves in the similar manner when it comes to our finances. I also just wanted to touch on Stan's question in the chat. The big pivotal event for me was really the divorce and separation that happened in 2020. Prior to then, so I shared in the last webinar that I was in a 10-year marriage, and I was a stay-at-home mom for the majority of that time. My former husband was a travel physician. Our household earned in the top 5% of taxpayers. And so I never really experienced like scarcity when it came to money, but I did experience a lot of shame and humiliation on a daily basis. I was constantly reminded that I didn't pay for the food I'm eating. I didn't pay for the home I live in. I'm not paying for the clothes I'm wearing. I was constantly reminded of those things. And just because of like the environment that I was living in, I was very unaware of just budgeting and how much things cost. I just bought what I needed to and it worked. That's kind of how I lived. And then when I became a single mom and I was on my own, I really had to think about how I'm gonna make all of this work. I can still go on vacations. I can still do spa treatments, but I have to like think it through and really have a big picture plan in place to be able to make that work. And that was kind of a scary process to navigate because single parenting was not a choice that I made. It was a choice that was made for me. I felt very disempowering at first, but gradually, little by little, I found a way to feel empowered within these circumstances and went on this journey that I described about finding podcasts, books, and getting to a place now where I really look forward once a month to updating my spreadsheet and seeing how much I spent or didn't spend.
I would also like to share my experience. I have three things that I do in order to balance the fiscal responsibility and self-care. Yes, it is so hard because sometimes like there's always like money involved when you do self-care. So the number one thing that I do is I save. For example, if I'm planning on a trip, I save a lot of money for that. And then after I save and I put it aside, and that is just designated for that trip alone. And I calculate all the expenses and all of the like what's expected of that. And then when it's all saved up, like now I can go on a trip. Because like I'm planning to go in the Philippines, like probably like in the next couple of years. So I'm starting to save for that as well. I haven't seen my family like in 20 years because a lot of things happened. I had to rebuild my life with my children. It was just like total chaos. So now I'm like saving for that. And then number two, I find like an alternative. Like for example, if I can't go to the spa, I would just like clean my bathroom and then buy some scented candles and then some flowers and take a long bath. And then I go to YouTube as well, like Ronnie. I go and look for like scrubs, how to make scrubs and like things that you put on your body, like organic stuff. And number three, the thing that I do is like there's a lot to do with like gratitude and like just seeing the things that I have right now, like simple things like when I wake up in the morning, like, oh, thank God I woke up in the morning. And these things are like for free, the air that I breathe, the water that I drink. And like when I go out to the park with my kids, for me, that's like self-care because not only that I feel good, like breathing the air outside, my kids are also like happy like after rewards, and then like we go for a little bit of like ice cream and that doesn't cost much. So sometimes like because here especially in LA, like there's always like the culture of like hustle and bustle, like we don't stop to smell the roses. We're always like on the go, we're always like working, and we just don't take a moment to just like sit and just stare at something, like stare at the sky. Or so those are self-care for me, like little simple things that are free.
There's something to really be said about just taking the time to be present, like you described, Cherry, smelling the roses, looking at the sky. I know my coping mechanism constantly had been disassociation or distraction. And when that came to self-care, it was often not addressing the root cause or thinking about what will truly help the situation and just saying, well, we're gonna go like do this expensive thing that will distract me for 3 hours. And then maybe afterwards, what I was worrying about won't exist anymore. But I think being present is such a great way to take the time to be self-aware, have gratitude, and be proactive about working on wellness and our health. And I'll share, I wish for the life of me I remembered the source of this, but I've read that there are three things that are said to cheer us up the most if we're experiencing anxiety or depression. One is exercise. I do think my running shoes are one of the best self-care items I've ever purchased. But two is an act of kindness towards someone else, volunteering. FinAbility is always looking for volunteers, shameless plug. But that can be powerful. And then sleep. I cannot say the number of times I thought the world was ending, took a nap or slept for 8 hours, and suddenly it was a lot easier to take care of myself in a healthier, productive way.
Mhm.
Shifting the conversation again, Ruhani and Cherry, you both shared that you're parents, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about what self-care looks like through that lens, and not only taking care of yourself, but your family and modeling behaviors.
Yeah, so I shared that in the beginning of my survivor journey, I really prioritized community and friend networks, social networks, and then kind of like the second step was doing things on my own that helped me to find my happy place. So when it comes to doing self-care and incorporating that with parenting, I have found it tremendously helpful to lean on my friend network, my social network. Um, it started for us with just sharing meals with our friends, and like while me and other adults are getting to chat and catch up, kids are also occupied and entertained. If we're friends with people that have similarly aged kids and long-term friendships, and I purposely sought out friendships through the kids' preschools or elementary schools so that there would always be that like familiarity with our friends because they're seeing each other every day. And now that has kind of evolved more to like, I'll just host a bunch of kids at my house. I'll have like 6 or 7 of them here all at once. Now that my kids are older and not diapers, so it's less intense when the kids are older. And then it'll go the other way, and so my friend will then host 6 or 7 friends and kids, and by sort of sharing that load with each other, that allows more time to engage in self-care and activities that help to find that happy place. I've also learned that like different people have different strengths, and if you make friends with a variety of people, you just kind of find ways to do like cool things without having to spend a ton of money. For example, really enjoy yoga. A yoga class costs about $25-$30 at a minimum, which is not bad, but maybe too much for like a regular every week kind of a thing. I happen to be friends with somebody who's a yoga instructor. So I get like a one-on-one informal yoga class every time I go hang out with her. And similarly, people that come hang out with me, they get free sewing lessons. You don't need to pay me for it. So when you have a wide social network, you just find people with different skills and talents. I have another friend who's great at woodworking. And we get free access to his woodworking workshop, and we've built some projects. Me and the kids together have built some projects over there. So it can just kind of be like a community thing that you share your talents and your tools with one another. And self-care can be very affordable when you do it through the help of a community.
I agree that with Rohani, because I also have like a community of my friends. They're also my coworkers, and every Monday when we have the meeting, we always have like a check-in. What did you do for the weekend? And I always learn things from them, and then they always learn things from me. And this morning, I was just like texting my friend and coworker back and forth, and she's giving me tips on how to keep my house clean, and I'm also giving her tips on how to like be healthier, like the foods that you eat or exercise and all that stuff. So it's a very encouraging and supportive environment to be with friends. And sometimes like I seek support from them. Like for instance, if I'm gonna do my self-care, it's gonna take me a long time, like for example a day like in the beach just by myself, reading a book. Then I would ask for one of my friends to take care of my kids, and then they do the same. Like if they have like a date night or a movie night with their friends, then I take care of their children. And I'm loving like the exchange that like we could always like lean on to each other, and also like in terms of emergencies. And the second thing that I do with my kids as well is I teach them self-care like at a very young age. I tell them like what makes you happy. Like sometimes we have this activity like at night. It would be like a board game. It would be something that they learn from about like self-care, like I would ask my daughter, like, did you meditate today? And then like, yes, I did, mom. And then like I would tell her like what are the benefits of meditating. And then sometimes I would ask my older kids to come walk with me. And then like while we're walking, we're processing things with each other, like we would talk about things, about life, about their future plans, about college, about what are they feeling right now, or like what are the challenges that they're facing. So that helps me a lot as a parent to understand, because the more I understand my kids, the more that I could help them solve their problems, and the more that I could support them as well and what they're going through. And the more that I support myself, because like I need to know like what's going on like in my household, because I deal with 4 different personalities. I have like younger age kids, I have older age kids, so it's really different. So every day, instead of like looking at it as chaotic, it's not chaotic. Like I just like one by one, like I try to understand like where they're coming from, and yeah, and there we understand each other.
Wonderful. Um, so I just have 2 more questions for the panel. I know we've been sharing a lot of resources throughout this conversation, but just want to see, are there any other tools or resources related to financial wellness or self-care that folks would like to share?
Yeah, so I mentioned the book, um, what was it again? Finance for the People. I mentioned the Netflix series, Ramit Sethi's How to Get Rich. Another one that really helped me a lot is the Career Contessa podcast. So like I said, I was a stay-at-home mom for almost a decade, and then entered the workforce in the pandemic as a single mom. It was a huge change for me. And during my marriage, my self-esteem was really degraded by the constant humiliation for not paying for anything and being told that like, oh, I can't show up on time to things. I'm a terrible communicator. I'm not organized. I really didn't believe that I had the skills to succeed in a career. And now I need this career to support my family. So it was my self-confidence was very struggling. And this podcast, the Career Contessa podcast, is mainly for women and for a lot of moms also. And it just has a lot of insider tips and personal stories and resources, and just being able to hear these experiences in the podcast helped me a lot to grow in my self-confidence and my self-esteem, and to feel like, yeah, I actually can do this. I can be a mom, and I can be a professional, career-oriented person, and I can be a grad student. I can do it all. I have the skills. So that was another a resource that really helped me a lot on my journey.
I would like to add to that. Thank you for sharing, Ronnie. That's a lot of resources, and you really detailed it. The Netflix, the podcasts, books. For me, like it just comes from the phone. Like when you're on your phone and you're on Instagram, for instance, like for me, of course, it's not so it's very, very hard to like avoid sometimes like watching memes and all that. But for me, because I like learning a lot. I like discovering new things. So I use the social media apps for that, like finding how to budget, like little topics like that. If I'm struggling with something, there's a lot of apps, and then there's also like podcasts like Rana was mentioning. And I ask my friends, and some of my friends, they're my mentors too, and they're experts. Like earlier, Ruhani also mentioned the libraries. It's a lot of resource, and sometimes you just have to ask the librarian. The librarian, they know a lot about a lot of things. And also FinAbility. We can always go to Stacy if you have like some questions or tools. She'll be able to share us with some. And also at my job at work, I work for Free From and Gifted by Free From. It's a nonprofit organization. Sometimes like they do have like a lot of resources when it comes to like the road to financially being stable, financial stability for survivors. So yes, all
Yeah.
of
If you've never gone to Freefrom's website, they have a lot of really cool research papers, and then Gifted from Freefrom has really cool products. So it's a great gift for family and friends if you haven't checked it out before. And I'll share one additional resource that isn't available yet, but one of the most exciting things about FinAbility is our Survivor Advisory Committee. And last year, they provided a bunch of ideas and feedback for how we can address some unmet needs in the survivor community. And one of the new programs that was born from that is going to be our financial support groups. These will be peer-to-peer groups where survivors post-separation can talk about what finances feel like and look like, share success stories, share resources and tools, but also come to the group with maybe a challenge that you're navigating and seek advice from the people who've done it best, other survivors. So very excited for that to be a live program later this summer. If you're interested in participating or accessing any of other FinAbility resources, I'm going to put our website in the chat. I also see, can you share that website? So I'll put Freefrom's website in the chat as well, because they're also a wonderful organization. Let me grab that URL. How to make sure I don't send you to the wrong Freefrom one. Okay, so there's that one as well. All right, so panelists, any final thoughts or stories you'd like to share?
I think that I just want to really highlight and emphasize the value of building community on your survivor journey, and just reach out to the people that live on your street, the people you see at work, the people that attend the same schools as your kids. Just being able to really build community with like-minded people does wonders for your empowerment journey to finding self-sufficiency with your finances and being able to engage in activities that help you to find your happy place. I just can't overemphasize the power of friendships and community.
I agree with Rouhani that community is truly wealth, and like all the resources and all that you can learn from each other. It's huge. And also I want to touch base on what Stan said earlier, that your physical and your emotional well-being and all other areas of your life is like really connected when it comes to self-care. Self-care, for example, if you're taking care of your financial well-being, you also have to take care of your physical well-being. You have to stay active, and so that like when you're active, I feel like, when I'm active, my brain is like much more like it performs better. And then when I'm emotionally good within myself, like I feel so much better. When I socialize with my friends, I feel so much better. When I'm doing little things for myself, like a treat, like a cup of coffee or something, going out, and just doing simple things for myself, it's all interconnected. Like you cannot like have it all, but if you start like those little habits and routine that would really like establish and make it all stable for you to prevent yourself from having anxiety and stress because you're worrying a lot about money, then self-care in all the areas is like a really good way to go.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing, Ruhani and Cherry. I'd love to open the floor where we have time to take a couple of questions, or if people in the audience have an insight they'd like to share, we'd welcome that as well. Okay, well, if there's nothing from the audience, I'm going to launch one final poll. This one is really important. It's how we make these programs as relevant and as effective as possible. So it's literally a 2-question feedback form. It should only take 30 seconds. Okay, and I will not share the results of this one. So anything you share will be private in this survey. And if any questions pop up while folks are completing this, do feel free to still ask as well. Stan, yes.
Thank you, both Sherry and Ruhani, for sharing what you've shared. It's been enlightening for me. As Stacy mentioned, we're launching this financial mentoring program, and I'm wondering if there was any one individual that may have shared any financial information, advice, suggestions, anything that was meaningful to you. If there was something that really triggered a thought or was helpful. Can you hear me? Did that come through?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. All right.
I was just kind of reading through my notes, and I wanted to share a story that came to mind. Since no one has jumped in, I'll just go ahead and share. Another thing that I've discovered is that thrift store shopping and consignment store shopping is really underrated. The first time I did it, I went with a friend, and we just went to like the neighborhood thrift store, and we had so much fun. We were just trying on goofy looking clothes. I bought some random things that I didn't know I wanted and spent like 20 bucks on a ton of stuff. And that sort of became like a habit that I started doing more and more often. And in addition to just being very financially like fiscally responsible, thrifting is also very environmentally responsible. In the context of current events globally, there's just so many problematic things about shopping from big corporations that trample upon human rights abroad. So thrift shopping also avoids those kinds of ethical concerns. It supports local businesses, it supports the local economy. So I just wanted to put a plug out there. Check out your neighborhood thrift store, or the consignment store, or Facebook Marketplace, or ThreadUp, or eBay. Just check out the used marketplace. It's so great for your wallet and the environment and the world.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, Ronnie, because I myself, I'm into like minimalism. I listened to this podcast about these two guys. They were touring around Los Angeles and like all over the states to kind of teach people that having like lesser stuff makes you like happier. And they were telling something, a story about their parents passing away, and like when they went to the parents' house, that there's just like so much stuff that they need to take care of, like to declutter, to put on a storage, and for what, like all of those time, use that could have been like for something else. So yeah, I was really enlightened by the minimalism, and like I do declutter monthly. Um, and just use like the stuff that I need to use. And also at the same time, I don't want to mistake that as being cheap, because I also listen to affirmations that like money is always coming to me. I just listen to those, and because like what you feed your subconscious sometimes like that becomes like your reality. And I know like it's chummy to say that like, oh, I listen to this manifesting, videos on Instagram and all that, but like maybe there's some truth to it. Like I do my own research and all that stuff, so all that juju. But yeah, I kind of believe some of them, and like I apply it to my life, that I believe in myself, that like in all my skills. Like Rohana was saying that she's so confident that she has all these skills, that are like very helpful for her. And yeah, and sometimes like it's all about like looking at our like self-worth, like reflecting, because as survivors, we never had the confidence. We were always put down. We were always say that we're not worthy, we're useless. We're useless without them. But that's not true. And we have to change the narrative within ourselves. We have to change our story, that we are worthy, we are enough. Like we have all these skills, we have all this knowledge, we can learn. We have a community that is bound by love, and you know, like lots of wealth. Like even if you say that like it's not like money wealth, but it's wealth, it's resources, and it's helping each other, it's embracing each other. And yeah, that's all for me.
Carrie, that's the best note we could possibly end on. Thank you so much for your words, and Ruhani as well. We appreciate your generosity, vulnerability, and time. And for everyone who joined, thank you so much for being a part of the conversation and for your support. We hope to see you all at the next one, and take care.
Bye, everyone.